Please call the roll.
Councillor Tigan.
Present.
Councillor Nishioka.
Present.
Councillor Matthews.
Here.
Councillor Gwen.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Nordyke.
Here.
Councillor Varney.
I'm here.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Here. Councillor Brown, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay. Do we have any additions or deletions?
Yes, Mayor Hoy, I move to approve the additions to this agenda, which include adding 3.3D and a letter of resignation from our city manager.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councillor Gwen.
Aye.
Councillor Brown.
Aye.
Councillor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councillor Varney.
Aye.
Councillor Tigan.
Aye.
Councillor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councillor Matthews.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye.
Just announce that you're going to consider the city manager's letter at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to consider the city manager's letter for resignation. Can I make the statement then?
Yes.
Okay. So tonight we will discuss City Manager Keith Stahley's offer of resignation, which was received over the weekend. This is an important decision for each member of council. Many of us on council have growing concerns about leadership for the organization, as articulated in an early draft of the Enterprise Leadership Performance Audit. Those concerns must be weighed against the need for stability for our community and the organization. I know each of us wants what is best for the community and the city, and I look forward to this discussion with my fellow members of council. Councillor Brown, do you have a motion?
I move that we accept the resignation of the city manager, Keith Stahley.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the recorder please call, any discussion? I apologize. Any discussion? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do know that when I think about this particular team, I know we have some very hard and difficult and challenging decisions to make. And that's not easy. It's not easy at all, especially when we consider the role that we have. None of this is easy, and I'll be the first person to say that. When I think about the public trust that we have to gain, regain, there's a lot of work that's there. And we have people on both sides of this equation. And my heart, at least what keeps me up late at night, it's thinking about the deficit that we're in. And I've said this before, and I'll say it many times again. Whether or not we get a levy on the ballot this spring, we are still left with some really tough choices as the city's leaders. If it passes, good. If it does not, our city will look extremely different. It will look extremely different. And so when I think about the leadership, I guess my plea is really to every single person in the city who considers this to be a home, and for those who actually vote. We have a lot of trust that we have to regain and earn. And I hope collectively that the citizens who have voted us to be in these seats, I hope that we can find that because it's just not easy. It's not easy. I yield the floor, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that, Councillor Tigan. Go ahead.
thank you. I'll be voting to accept City Manager Stahley's resignation this evening, but I also want to acknowledge the work that he's done on behalf of the city. It's been a remarkably trying few years that he's helped guide the council and our city, and I really want to acknowledge his work publicly. And I also want to acknowledge that the way in which the resignation takes place allows for the city manager to receive a severance and be made whole as contemplated in his contract. It's a very important part of the decision to support accepting his letter of resignation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tigan. Councillor Nishioka?
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. Yes, following with Councillor Tigan's statements, I too want to state that I am very happy that Keith served for us, and I recognize all the hard work that he did, all the efforts that he did, and I believe that he has chosen this path, and I do want to ensure that he receives all the benefits and severance packages that he deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nishioka. Anything further? Seeing nothing further, would the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Counselor Nordyke. Aye. Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. I want to acknowledge the fact that Deputy City Manager Krishna Namburi will be acting as, is it in charge? In capacity. So thank you, Krishna, for being here and for taking that on. Now it's time to move on to Council and City Manager comment. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Seeing nothing, we will move on to proclamations. Dr. Brown, please come forward. And Pastors Wade Harris and Evelyn McCoy Harris from Seed of Faith Ministries, please come forward. Councillor Brown will read and present the proclamation, and thank you for doing so, sir. This is a big deal. Come on in. Come on in.
So since I have the mic, I love to talk, and people in this chamber, they know that. So when I think about, being a person of color, a Black African American, obviously, this is it's a God-given ability, and so I'm very thankful for that. And when I think about the leadership that this city currently has, and of course, when I think about the work that both of you are doing and members of your church are doing in this community, it means a lot, and I want to say thank you. So here's the proclamation. Whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson, a noted Black scholar and son of former slaves, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, and for many years, the second week of February, chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and, of course, Abraham Lincoln. It was celebrated by African Americans in the United States. And whereas it is imperative that each of us, we learn about, shed some light upon, and condemn the inhumanity of injustices and the inequities that Black and African Americans continue to experience and endure. But moreover, that each of us takes action to realize true reforms, and whereas the Salem City Council has denounced racism as a systemic issue creating desperate outcomes in many areas of life, including family stability. On January 25th, 2021, Council adopted Resolution 2021-2 condemning white supremacy and racism, and Resolution 2021-3 affirming that racism is a public health crisis. And whereas Black History Month celebrates the achievements of African Americans in the arts, civil rights, education, entertainment, government, history, law, literature, medicine, military, music, politics, science, sports, faith, and other endeavors. And whereas we, as the City of Salem, proudly commend the many achievements, successes, and contributions of African Americans whose roots began with a foundation of incredible strength, resilience, creativity, and unity. And now, therefore, in recognition of African Americans, Black History Month, past and present, in our community, on behalf of our mayor, Mayor Hoy, and of course, city councilors here, we do hereby proclaim the month of February 2025 as Black History Month in the city of Salem, Oregon, and encourage all residents to join in learning about and celebrating the contributions African Americans have made to our country, our state, and our community. Dated this 10th day of February 2025. You can clap. We're going to do a photo op here in a minute, but I want to pass the mic on to you if you will have anything you'd like to say.
Well, I just want to say thank you. This is another historical moment for Seed of Faith Ministries, and we're proud to be residents, we're proud to be servants, and we are proud that we are serving under the new Mayor Hoy.
Thank you.
We have no presentations this evening, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to public comment.
Mike's got it here.
Thank you.
So we've got 2 pages of folks in, and then 2 people that are
Online.
They come in last.
Okay, thank you. Danny, the rules.
You have 3 minutes to testify.
You'll have 3 minutes to testify when I call your name. The yellow light flashes at 2 minutes? 1 minute.
After 2 minutes.
After 2 minutes, the yellow light flashes, and then when the red light comes on, we need you to stop, because we have a lot of people to testify, and we want to give everybody the chance tonight. So, first up is George McClellan, and when you come up, please announce your name and either your address or your ward for the record.
My name is George McClellan. I live at 3276 Turner Road, Salem.
Go right ahead, sir.
All right. First of all, I want to give you a little background on myself. I'm an A&P mechanic, with IA Inspection Authority. I work with the B-17 Alliance. I'm the only FAA certified man to do that service there with B-17 Alliance. And as you know, the B-17 is quite an attraction to the city of Salem. I scribbled my notes here and having a hard time deciding where to start here. I'm also a pilot. I'm a commercial pilot with multiple type ratings, flying heavy-duty aircraft, jet and turbine and piston powered. I spent a lot of time flying for the Commemorative Air Force, flying heavy World War II bombers. The reason I'm here is to discuss the proposed landing fees. And I want to reference that there's a young lady that will speak probably later on this evening, Hannah McLaughlin, who has made a statement or presented notes to you, which she will enhance on tonight. And this young lady is to be admired for her ability to understand the airport environment that the Salem Airport exists in. As you know, the Salem Airport, the businesses, you got 60,000 businesses with 84,000 employees, but everybody in the city of Salem uses that airport. And I would recommend that you restrict the landing fees only to turbine aircraft or jet aircraft over the 12,500 pound, where the corporations that operate those aircraft expect to pay a landing fee, and they can afford it because they write it off on their taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClellan, and thank you for your service. Karen Bolliger.
Please, thanks. Good evening. My name is Karen Bolliger, and I'm representing Center 50 Plus, which is in Ward 5. I've been asked to address the City Council tonight on the subject of the May levy and the shortfall of $13.8 million in the city's budget. In late October 2024, a committee was formed to address the issue at Center 50 Plus, Public Library, and the Parks and Recreation Department. Representatives of all three organizations met weekly, and I do mean weekly, to discuss the possibility of presenting a levy in the May elections, along with a vote to select a city councilor to fill Mayor Julie Hoy's vacant seat. It was amazing that all three organizations' representatives were able to discuss, plan, and carry out ideas for a levy. We were clear from the beginning that this was a three-way movement for a three-way resolution. Each group spoke at city council meetings as well as to individual council members. We understand that there will be a levy and are in the process of discussing what that levy would look like in each organization. In other words, what services will be restored at Center 50 Plus, Public Library, and Parks and Recreation Department. Each area has had services reduced recently, especially around the COVID years. Constituents of these organizations came to city council meetings where many of them spoke to you, the city council, of the importance of Center 50 Plus, the library, and Parks and Recreation. I was particularly proud of the seniors who came out at night to add their support to what the council had already heard. The Livability Levy Commission is now ready to conduct a campaign and reach out to Salem homeowner voters about the importance and results of what the levy can do for Salem. Thank you, Mayor Julie Hoy, City Council, and Acting City Manager for your attention to this important issue. Are there any questions I may be able to answer? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Larry Ramsey. be sure to state your name and ward or address for the record, please, sir.
I live at 285 16th Street Southeast, 97301. And I'm here to talk about Measure 5D, the local option tax. We got a sign up there that says, among other things, that Salem is a safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure. And part of that safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure is public safety, libraries, and senior citizen centers. There are some things that just can't qualify by dollars and cents. I think we could look back in the past and we can find some ballot measures we passed that didn't allow us to save money in flush years. Well, that's all behind us now. But somehow or another, we got to come up with the money for the local option tax, Measure A. Thank you.
Carol Snyder.
Good evening. I'm Carol Snyder, the president of Salem Parks Foundation, and I live in Ward 2. I'm here on behalf of Salem Parks Foundation to ask you to please put a livability levy on the May 20 ballot. The levy will support Salem's libraries, Center 50 Plus, and our city's parks and recreation system. I'll just be talking about the Parks and Recreation Park. Unlike our libraries and Center 50 Plus, city parks are in no real danger of actually being closed if we don't pass a livability levy, because parks are not buildings. If the levy doesn't pass, we won't be putting orange tape around the perimeters of our parks, and we all know that wouldn't work anyway. But parks need care. Grass needs to be mowed, trees and bushes pruned, walkways kept safe and accessible, trash picked up and removed, mud dispensers restocked, playground equipment, benches, and picnic tables repaired or replaced. Tennis, basketball, and pickleball courts need to be maintained. Restrooms cleaned and serviced. Although I guess those are buildings and they could be closed. All of that care and maintenance takes equipment, supplies, and staff time. The recreation part of Parks and Recreation will also be supported by the levy. Summer programs in soccer, softball, track, nature exploration, and more are important to our families, but may need to be cut substantially without this added help. One last consideration is the current effort to increase the availability of housing in Salem, especially multifamily dwellings. More and denser housing will propel the need to develop more of our undeveloped park properties, and the anticipated greater use of our parks will require more maintenance. Salem is blessed with a lot of citizens willing to volunteer to care for the parks they love, to help with the recreation programs, and to donate money for added amenities. We are grateful for those caring citizens, but we cannot expect the wonderful volunteers and generous donors to do all that needs to be done or pay for all the cost. The proposed levy will increase property taxes. It's a lot to ask that people add to their already high taxes to maintain our parks and support our recreation programs. But we believe that many Salem citizens will be willing to do just that. And we're only asking you to ask them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And at Councillor Nordyke's welcome suggestion, I'm going to call two names. So the first person testify and the other person come up and be ready, and that'll help to move things along a little bit. Thank you. I see Zoe Harper, I think it is. Zoe? Is Zoe back? Awesome. And then after Zoe is Neil White. I apologize. It's Hannah and Zoe, one right after the other. Good job, Mom. Thank you.
know where the button is. Hello, my name is Hannah Harper and I live in Woodford. I like when my parents bring me to the library to read me some books. Please support the library. Hello, my name is Zoe Harper and I live in Ward 4. This is my first city council meeting and I'd like to be on city council someday. Mayor Hoy and members of the city council, I think you're so powerful and important. Please use your power and your voice to help support the library and get people to vote for the library. Thank you for listening to me and supporting the library.
Amazing. Thank you, ladies, for showing up. And Neil White and then Victoria Tim. Please remember to state your...
You want me to follow that?
Yeah. Don't forget, please remember to state your address or ward for the record.
Neil White, 581 Fannie Way Northeast, Salem, Oregon. And I'm speaking on behalf of over 2,000 pilots in the Oregon Pilots Association and over 300,000 pilots of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. And here to discuss the landing fees. When we talk about landing fees, we need to identify the maximum takeoff weight. And to give you about 4 examples, a Cessna Caravan, which we see coming into Salem quite frequently with FedEx, is sitting at 8,000 pounds. A King Air, a twin engine, 10,000 pounds. A Cessna Citation, a small jet, 10,800 pounds. And a Boeing 737-800, 174,000 pounds. So the landing fees are something that these commercial operators normally expect to have to incur during their operation. The city of Salem spent or has a deficit of $600,000 to accommodate the airlines coming into here. And so they're trying to recoup some of that cost in landing fees. An 8,000 pound maximum takeoff weight of an aircraft is normally for commercial operations. And the city of Salem has realized great financial benefits by bringing in the airlines with the peripheral economy, income, businesses, fuels, taxes, and so on into the city of Salem and the coffers. The commercial operators can pass that landing fee off to their customers, whether they be at packages or whether they be at passengers. But the private pilot is not so easily able to absorb those landing fees costs. So I'd recommend that you look at the landing fees, the structure, the amount of weight that the aircraft is to be set at a minimum of 7,900 pounds. And to recoup that $600,000 the city of Salem incurred for the airlines is not going to be really, you're not going to recoup it in landing fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Victoria, please go ahead. And next up is David Levy.
Good evening, Council. My name is Victoria Tim, and I'm from Ward 6. Today, I would like to talk to you, as I have before, about the livability levy that you guys presumably will be putting on the ballot. And from what I understand, you guys have 2 options. You have one that is roughly $1.10 and one that is 98 cents. I would love for the $1.10 one to be put on the ballot and to have the library, the parks, and the Center 50 Plus have the money that they deserve. But I'm cynical. I know a thing or two about the voters, and I know that people want less or want to pay less. So, hoping that we don't have to close our library, hoping we don't have to reduce our Center 50 Plus and shutter our parks, I'm suggesting that you put the lower amount on the levy. That being said, though, a 5-year levy is not a long-term solution. I worry about 5 years down the line, assuming this does get passed, and it will take work, what'll happen then? Can we do it again? Are we willing every half decade to put our library, our parks, our Center 50 Plus on the line? And not only that, but our deficit is only going to grow. I know you guys' hands are tied. The Oregon Constitution, there's some things about property tax. It's not fun. And I'm sorry that you guys have to deal with that, but we need to think of long-term solutions here. In 5 years, that isn't going to cut it. Salem cannot be on the verge of becoming a completely different city on the whim of voters who, frankly, may not understand the true implications of what they're voting for. Not to say that voters don't know, but money, you know? So I hope we can come up with some long-term solutions soon. But for the time being, I support the levy, and good luck.
Thank you for your testimony. David, is it levy or levy? Okay, well, it's both right now, isn't it?
Thank you.
And next up is Brittany Riddle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Levy, and I am currently the chair of the Salem Library Advisory Board. But I'm speaking tonight as a member of a coalition of library, Center 50, and Park and Rec advocates, some of whom you've heard from tonight. I'm going to keep my comments brief because I know you're hearing from a lot of people this evening. But in preparing my presentation tonight, I was reminded of a quote from Voltaire. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You have difficult decisions to make tonight. You have, as has been previously stated, financial challenges that many of us in the audience recognize but have a hard time understanding. And so in lieu of that quote from Voltaire, I'm going to read you a letter that we'll be submitting to you on behalf of the Friends of Center 50, the Library Foundation, and the Parks and Rec Foundation as well. And in it, we'll be sending this out to you. But essentially, our coalition is asking you to direct staff to return to council on the 24th of this month with a resolution referring for a 5-year local option levy to the voters on May 20th. And that levy rate we would recommend be 98 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. Obviously, we represent a diverse coalition with many interests, many stakeholders. And it was difficult to come to that number, but we also recognize, as the previous speaker stated, as well as other speakers, what this community can absorb. And part of this is a new funding mechanism for the city. So I'm hoping that over the 5 years, if this does pass, we'll develop a trust with the members of our community that they can see the benefits of this unique funding system. So thank you for your consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Mr. Levy. Next up, Nancy Layton, and then Hannah McLaughlin. And please remember to state your name and your ward or your address for the record.
Hi guys, my name is Brittany Riddle. I live in Ward 7. I'm here not only as a resident of Salem, but I also work for Willamette Vital Health. I'm the liaison there, and I see a lot of really familiar faces in this room who utilize the Parks and Rec, who utilize Center 50 Plus, who utilize the library, and all of these things are extremely important to our community. I didn't even know about the landing fees, and I will look that up. I already wrote a letter to the city, so I'm going to kind of go over that real quick. In my professional and volunteer capacities, I have seen firsthand the profound impact these facilities have on our community. As a member of multiple boards, including the Willamette Health Council, Community Action Committee, AUSA, as well as a volunteer for organizations like the Red Cross, Oregon National Guard, I have worked closely with these institutions to serve our seniors, veterans, and broader community. By day, as a liaison for WVH, I have partnered extensively with Center 50 Plus, Salem Public Library, and Salem Park and Rec to provide critical services and programs to all of our residents. Closing these facilities will have devastating consequences. Center 50 Plus is the heart and soul of our senior community, and it provides programs and events that enhance mental health, social connection, and education. I have personally taught classes there, as well as facilitated events that talk about difficult topics, such as end-of-life planning, less taboo and more accessible, making those less taboo and more accessible. I'm not nervous, it's fine. Center 50 Plus Wellness on Wheels. Their program reached over 8,000 older adults, demonstrating its extensive outreach and impact. The Salem Public Library is a cornerstone of education and accessibility, offering vital resources for children, job seekers, and residents without internet access, and is an irreplaceable space for learning and community engagement. According to the Oregon Public Library statistics for 2022 and 2023, the library serves a population of over 177,000 people. These are for 2 years ago, guys, these statistics. I'm running out of time. These are pretty important. I just want to stress how important these actually are. Salem Park and Recreation creates spaces where families, children, and individuals can find recreation, solace, and connection. Our parks are essential for physical and mental health of our residents and contribute significantly to the livability of Salem. Studies have shown that access to green spaces can reduce stress, improve health outcomes, and foster community bonds. And if there's anything that we need more in this world right now, it's fostering community bonds. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks.
Next up is Nancy Layton and then Hannah McLaughlin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like I'm among friends tonight. And I'm going to tell you, when I first got involved in this whole business of looking for funding initially for the library, I knew almost nobody in the city of Salem. We moved here in March of 2022, which means we're coming up on our 3-year anniversary of living in this fair city. We were here on vacation a year before and fell in love with the city and decided to pull up our roots from Southern California and get the heck up to Salem. And now I can look around this room and I can recognize friends everywhere I turn my eyes, and you have no idea how meaningful that is to me. What I have to say tonight is an observation that I recently made on Saturday when I was working in the bookstore at the library, the bookstore which is one of the fundraising activities from the Friends of the Library. I've been a member of the Friends of the Library almost since we moved here because it gave me an opportunity to do some community outreach. While I was working on Saturday, I had no fewer than 4 customers say to me, "Keep the change as a donation." One lady bought a book and a bookmark, $3.25, handed me a $5 bill and said, "Please keep the change." In the middle of my busy afternoon, a man walked in, handed me a small change purse and said, "Can you accept this as a donation?" It had about $3 in coins in it. I don't know if it was his kids or if it was just something he had rattling around in a pocket and wanted to get rid of. I don't know. What I want to say is I take this as an omen that people are waking up, hearing the message already, even though we haven't even really begun to get out there and preach it. The coalition is standing prepared to start that process once you land on a number and make it happen for the May ballot. And you know we've got your backs.
Thank you for your testimony. Hannah McLaughlin and then Jim Shepke.
Good evening. My name is Hannah McLaughlin. I live at 4193 Hayesville Drive, Northeast, and I'm here as both a tenant on the airport and as an employee of a company in Aurora that would be negatively impacted by the proposed fees as they're currently written. I am not against fees by any means when they are implemented the right way, but I am concerned about how the city is choosing to go about it. I'm concerned that while the airport is operating at a $600,000 a year deficit, the city wants to pay a company to come in and monitor ADSB data and put in cameras to enforce these fees. ADSB was sold to pilots as a safety tool. It was never meant to be used as a way to collect fees, and the AOPA is actively looking at legislation to prohibit this use of this data. I'm also concerned about the gross weight that has been presented. I know that we have upped it to 7,000 pounds gross weight, but it has already been suggested that it go back down to 5,000 pounds, and that includes a number of flight training aircraft, and I know that I, as a student pilot, and even now, cannot afford any increase to my flying. The company I work for provides type ratings in large aircraft, And the current fees as they're written would be an $81 per landing fee for us, and that would put an end to us coming to the airport. We cannot come spend half an hour doing pattern work at the Salem airport and put 5 or 6 landings in and pass on a cost of $600 an hour, $500 to $600 an hour to our students. We just can't make that work. And on a personal note, I got my job at the company I work at through networking I was able to do when they were here on training flights. And I will have the opportunity through work to do training in these aircraft, and I will not be able to come do training at my home airport if these fees are published as they are. I did bring some alternatives to propose. I would propose that the fee requirement be changed to any aircraft that requires a type rating. This covers all jet aircraft and anything over 12,500 pounds. I would put in exemptions for known flight training providers, for experimental and limited category aircraft that cannot recoup these costs, and blanket exemptions on days that people like the B-17 Alliance host public events. I would partner with businesses like the restaurant or the B-17 Alliance to run fuel discounts during the summer for special events. Pilots love to fly for cheap gas and lunch. It's a thing, $100 hamburger. You could easily double the overnight fees at the airport and be within industry standard. And I would propose a waiver with a minimum fuel purchase, 10 gallons, also industry standard. And you could put a drop box out. I had someone 2 weeks ago ask me how to pay the overnight fee after hours and couldn't because there was no drop box. And I would recommend having the FBO collect fees. There's no reason to bring in an outside company when the airport's at a deficit. And I know that we all want the airport to succeed, and I also know that fees can be very damaging, so I would encourage the council to be careful on how they implement these. Thank you.
Testimony. May I ask you a question? What does a plane you would fly weigh? Like, what are you learning to fly in?
So my family has a Stinson 108, and it would fall under, we'd be under 3,000 pounds gross. My concern is that once you start moving the weight lower and lower, that eventually everyone will be paying the fee, and it will continue to push traffic out of the airport.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Shetke, and then Patrick, I think it's Jackson.
Mayor and Council, Jim Shepke, Ward 2, representing Fund Our Libraries. We're part of the great coalition that you've heard about tonight. And regarding Agenda Item 5D, I'm not going to add to what you've already heard tonight from supporters of the livability levy. I think Hannah and Zoe said it all. That's my opinion. But what I wanted to share was my deep concern about multiple money measures on the May 20 ballot. In my 25 years of working at the State Library, I probably observed 100 or more levy and bond elections for libraries throughout Oregon. In our role of helping local libraries improve their support, we tried to learn from every election, most of which were successful, but some were not. About those that were not, we learned that not being the only money measure on the ballot was a common way to lose. There's often a segment of voters who have a very negative reaction to seeing more than one local government with their hand out, and they say no to all of them. This is exactly what happened last November in Independence, which tried to pass their own livability levy for their library, museum, and parks. Unfortunately for them, their school district and Chemeketa Community College were also on that ballot, and voters rejected all of them by a wide margin. Now the Independence Library may close or be severely cut back because of the loss. As you know, the College Board is thinking about putting their bond measure back on the ballot in May. I believe they will decide that at their meeting on February 19th. We're going to have a hard time enough passing a livability levy here. Chemeketa's bond measure is not urgent. Our levy is. They should put their measure off until November, and if they don't, we may all lose. There's already a Polk County measure that will be on the ballot in West Salem. The College the college measure would make 3 measures in West Salem. I seem to recall hearing that you all wanted to work more closely and collaboratively with Marion County Commissioners and other elected officials this year. I ask that you do just that and ask the College Board to please defer their measure until November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepke. It was Patrick Jackson, I believe, or, yeah, okay. And then Rachel Atchison.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Jackson. I am Ward 4, and I'm here speaking on 5D, so our levy. Councilors and mayor. I guess I could identify myself with all the nonprofits and boards and committees I'm part of. That might take up a lot of time. Tonight, I'm not speaking on behalf of all those, so I want to be very clear about that. I'm just speaking on behalf of myself. This is a hard one. I love the puppy factor of this one, right? We've got parks, which are amazing. I love parks. I spend lots of time there with my kids. Centers 50 plus, obviously amazing. And what else are we doing? Libraries, right? Who doesn't love libraries? Problem is that's 10% of our overall budget roughly, right? So when we have a budget of over $100 million and we're getting an extra 10% added to it, why not just use a shell game, move some money around? Got a Band-Aid, let's move on for another year. I'm probably the only person saying that tonight that I've heard so far, but that's how I personally feel about this. So I'm also a recovering alcoholic addict of 18 plus years. I've lived that life and I hit a pretty hard, fast bottom at the age of 26 years old. I know what it's like to take that drink when I know that it's what's killing me, and I know that it's also the only thing that's getting me to the next day. And I look around at our community and I see that we have a city that has decided to go from doing the operations of streets and waste, and we've got into the business of recovery and homeless shelters, and that's not within our lanes. As far as I'm concerned, that's a county project. We have facilities now where you can stay high, where I personally, as a person that has helped people in recovery, it's really hard to help someone with recovery when they're still high. I can't give you my personal experience in 50 seconds. What I can tell you is that our city has left its lane and we're spending millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. In our last regime, councilors, when I asked them hard questions, they would lie to me and look up the ceiling and not answer me in personal meetings and in committee meetings. And I know we have a different group now, but the problem is that we're $13 million off, which is close. And we have policies that are wrong that we can fix that would bridge that gap. We have buildings that the city owns that we could let the county run that would bridge that gap. And we're not doing it right. My personal feelings is we don't need $13 million. We just need to change some other. Time's up.
Thank you for your testimony. Rachel Atchison, and then John, I think it's Kelsey or Ketsey.
Well, hi, I have a different take. My name is Rachel Atchison, and I live in Ward 3, and I'm here to talk about 5D also. A city without parks, libraries, and community centers would be a dried up husk of a place with only the sound of sirens running through it. Long-term solutions to the budget problem, such as ending tax abatements and payment in lieu of taxes, need to be pursued going forward. But here we are trying to prevent a shutdown on July 1st. You all have directed the traffic of community ideas into only one lane, this livability levy. So here's my concern. Putting this on the ballot, paid for by library donations, and with only a lukewarm shrug of support is a no-risk position for you all to take. We have a mayor who was recently elected on a campaign which denied that there was a budget crisis and called for no new taxes. For this levy to pass at any dollar amount per thousand, it will especially require her vocal, energetic support. It is the people who voted for Julie Hoy that will probably need the most convincing. My hope is that she now not only understands what political capital is, but is actually willing to spend some advocating for this levy. Anyway, I thank you all for your work and for hearing my concerns, and I hope to be working with you all on getting this passed.
Thank you for your testimony. John, is it Kelsey or Ketsky?
It's Kedzie. You had it right the second time. Yeah, I'm scribbly. 2040 Virginia Street Northeast, so Ward 1. I moved here a year and a half ago with my wife, also transplant from Southern California, wanted to get out of there, originally from the Midwest. This was a lot more like that, but on the coast. So it was like the best of both worlds. Town's awesome. It's like the sweet spot for size. It's not too big. It's not too small. I had my daughter up here, like right after we moved. So it was kind of nuts. And the libraries and parks have been a huge part of that experience for my daughter. Going to the library, going to a lot of their programs for like, like story time and little kid things like that. It's been great. I didn't know anybody up here. I didn't know where to go or what to do. We like blindly moved up here without knowing anybody because we liked it so much. Yeah, I didn't prepare anything, so just kind of rolling off. So going to the library was like community. It's, the city's more than just streets and buildings, although if we lose a lot of this stuff, I guess it would be a little bit more like that, and like, yeah, sirens. But I mean, I lived in LA, so lots of sirens, but there was community, a lot of taxes. So I'm not opposed to taxes, coming from Illinois and California. I would definitely pay the $1.09, but I do understand that, people pay less. If I paid more, I'd definitely pay less too, so I'd pay either of those. I saw my daughter learn to crawl from watching kids at the library. She's constantly looking at other kids and learning from them. She doesn't have any siblings. So, she's not going to learn it from me, as much as I crawl. But she honestly, I don't know what I would do if, I live I live against Inglewood Park. I love the parks. I mean, I guess the best I can do is go out there and mow it after nobody else is, but, my mower's not that big. Just a guy who really desperately likes the community of the library and of the city. But if we have one less place for community and for safety, it's going to be really sad. It'd be a disgrace to have a state city in the United States of America that didn't have a library or parks that, had grass that was under a foot tall. So I guess I'm just going to stop rambling and thank you for the time.
Thank you for your testimony. Now we have two folks signed up with testimony online. Is Brooke Proctor there? You're in. Okay, well, come on down. Please state your name and your ward or your address, please. Is Keegan Stershik here? Nice. Keegan, you're next up, okay?
Good evening, counselors and fellow residents of Salem. My name is Brooke Proctor. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from Ward 2. I'm here to share a story about my neighbor, whom I'll refer to as Miss Kelly to protect her identity. While working with Center 50 Plus, I came across Miss Kelly's name. There was an opportunity to connect Willamette University students with a local neighbor in need of some help before the weather got worse. So I gathered a small crew and headed over to meet Miss Kelly. When we arrived, she rolled out onto her porch in a wheelchair, and at the same time I noticed her beautiful garden. The thing is, her house has stairs, so she can't fully enjoy the view or tend to her flowers in the same way she once could. Regardless, she held her garden's size and variety of flowers with lots of pride. Miss Kelly spent the day giving us orders, and in the same breath, she was sharing stories about her life in Texas or her love of John Prine's music. By the end of our visit, it was clear that Miss Kelly cherished two things above all else: her garden and good conversation. She talked about her neighbors, some of whom were aging just like her. I often wonder what Miss Kelly's day-to-day looks like, and I know that programs like those hosted at Center 50 Plus play a large role in keeping her and others like her connected. Through this program and others like it, older adults in our community are linked with caring people who offer help in ways that truly matter to them, whether that's a bit of gardening or a good conversation. Without Center 50 Plus, older adults just like Miss Kelly would face even more isolation. Without Center 50 Plus, Miss Kelly's roses might overgrow and freeze in the winter. Without Center 50 Plus, I would know much less about John Prine. Without Center 50 Plus, we all lose out on valuable connections and relationships. I'm grateful for the work Center 50 Plus does to bring people together and offer support to those who need it most. I hope you can all see the value of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Keegan, you're up.
Okay. Hi, my name is Keegan Stershik. I use he, him pronouns, and I live in Ward 2. And through my studies at Willamette University, I have had the opportunity and privilege to learn more about Center 50 Plus. I would like to say that Center 50 Plus is an integral part of Salem. It provides community and supportive services to older adults who are often vulnerable and a vulnerable and marginalized population in America. For context, in the United States, approximately 43% of adults aged 60 or older report feeling lonely. Additionally, 24% of people aged 65 and older are socially isolated. Organizations like Center 50 Plus combat these statistics by providing safe, welcoming, and educational environments for older individuals. Center 50 Plus also bridges the gap between younger and older generations in Salem by hosting events such as Generations Over Dinner and Action Against Ageism. Said events serve to dismantle ageism and create belonging in our communities. By passing this resolution, the Salem Council will show that they are invested in the health and well-being of older generations and are open to providing an inclusive and supportive community for all. For homeowners, the cost of the levy is insignificant compared to the net good of keeping the Center 50 Plus, our public libraries, and parks open. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And I just want to say publicly, thank you to all of you who came to testify. It's just really important that we show up and that we get involved. So I personally appreciate that very much. Now we're going to move on to the consent calendar. Councillor Nishioka, do you have a motion for the consent calendar?
Yes, thank you, I do. I move to approve the consent calendar with the exception of 3.2A pulled by Councillor Matthews.
Second. We have a motion and Councillor Gwynn for a second.
Ask her for discussion.
Is there any discussion?
Should I read the items?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. The consent calendar consists of 3.1A minutes from the January 21st, 2025 work session, 3.1B, which are the minutes from the January 27th City Council meeting, Resolution 3.2B, authorizing transfer of appropriations in multiple funds to support mid-year liability insurance rate adjustments. Under action items, it is 3.3A, submit application for federal transportation funding allocated by the Salem-Keizer Area Metropolitan Planning Organization for 6 projects. 3.3B, apply for a planning grant to fund preliminary designs for the River Road South Slide Mitigation Project through the Protect Grant Program. 3.3C, execute a lease agreement with the owner of 2850 Broadway Street Northeast for temporary relocation of the Civic Center services. And 3.3D, Authorize an additional 15 hours of staff time to facilitate the City Efficiencies Committee. And that concludes the consent calendar.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Yes, Councillor Gwynn.
I just had one question. So on 3.3D, is that one more meeting of the Efficiency Committee?
If I may, Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. Yes, it is one more meeting scheduled for this coming Wednesday.
Thank you, Josh. Anything further? Yes, Councillor Varney.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention on the same item, because I've been following the meetings of that committee, and I've been pleasantly surprised with the progress they've made. And at their meeting on Friday, they had kind of come together with their conclusions, et cetera, and they need this time in order to just kind of put everything together to present it to council.
Thank you for that, Councillor Varney. Anyone else? Okay. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councillor Nordyke. Aye. Councillor Varney.
Aye.
Councillor Tigan.
Aye.
Councillor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councillor Matthews.
Aye.
Councillor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councillor Brown.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Okay, now we are moving on to public hearings.
The Salem City Council will now conduct a public hearing concerning designation of the Criterion Schoolhouse located at 2330 17th Street Northeast as a local historic resource. The criteria applicable to the decision is SRC 230.010E. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria which the person believes to apply to the decision. A failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue shall preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Testimony will be allowed as follows. The applicant is limited to 10 minutes. And we'll start off with the staff presentation first, followed by the applicant, and then applicable neighborhood associations are limited to 5 minutes. Other interested parties are limited to 3 minutes, and the applicant has rebuttal time of 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. I'm Jake Morris, Historic Planner for the City of Salem. I would like to enter the staff report, presentation, and comments forwarded since the staff report was written into the record. The Criterion School. This is a public hearing tonight to take action on whether to advance Ordinance Bill 225 designating this Criterion Schoolhouse as a local historic resource to second reading for enactment. The Criterion Schoolhouse is located at 2330 17th Street Northeast on the grounds of the Oregon State Fairgrounds. The Criterion School is a one-room schoolhouse originally erected in Criterion, Oregon in 1912. It served the children of local ranches until 1925. Upon the completion of the highway from the Dalles to Klamath Falls in 1925, the school was no longer needed as officials decided to bus students north to a larger school using the newly completed road. It was then occasionally used for community events until 1953, when it was abandoned and intermittently used for grain and hay storage. The Oregon State Department of Education acquired the building after a statewide search for representative early schools they could move to the Oregon State Fairgrounds for United States Bicentennial Celebration in 1976. A relocation of that distance posed a challenge. Different options were considered, including moving it by helicopter. Ultimately, the move was a cooperative project between the Department of Education, Oregon National Guard, and other volunteers. To make it possible for the schoolhouse to fit on the road, the roof was removed and the school was cut in half. The building was then reassembled on fairground property. Originally intended as a temporary arrangement, the schoolhouse was a popular attraction and has remained as part of the fairgrounds until the current day. Representatives from the Criterion Schoolhouse Committee, the Oregon Retired Educators Association, and the Oregon State Fair submitted a local historic resource designation application to the City of Salem on July 27th of 2023. On November 21st, 2024, the Historic Landmarks Commission held a public hearing, finding that the Criterion Schoolhouse met the criteria for designation as a local historic resource and forwarded that recommendation to Council. In order to qualify for designation, the property needs to meet the applicable criterion for age, significance, and integrity. First, age. The resource, built in 1912, is over 112, well over the 50-year threshold. Second is significance. Staff recommends that the potential resource has both cultural and human significance for the following reasons. First is an embodiment of the early history of education in Oregon, especially from 1912 to 1925. Second, for its contribution to the historic character of the Oregon State Fair in Salem, and also for assistance with the efforts of the Oregon Department of Education, who conducted a large statewide search for intact one-room schoolhouses as part of the Oregon's USA Bicentennial of 1976. It is evidence of Oregon's participation in the nationwide celebration of that bicentennial. Staff also recommends that the Criterion Schoolhouse has architectural significance as an excellent example of vernacular one-room schoolhouse building type. Very few of these buildings still exist in a well-preserved and unaltered form, and this particular one has an asymmetrical arrangement of windows on one side and no windows on the other, which allows for continuous chalkboards, and that is an unusual and distinctive feature. The third aspect is integrity. Staff recommends that the resource retains its original design characteristics and materials, serving as a significant example of the one-room schoolhouse building type, meeting this criterion. I'd like to provide a summary of the results of the local designation. It provides a formal recognition of a property as historically significant. It also identifies the physical features that allow it to convey that significance. Formal designation is often a prerequisite for grants and incentives related to historic properties. Second, designation of historic properties provides the local protective process from inappropriate alterations and demolition under city code. And third, designation poses no impact on ownership, and the city does not assume any responsibility to maintain or repair as a result of a designation. Staff recommends that City Council advance Ordinance Bill number 225 to second reading for enactment, designating the Criterion Schoolhouse as a local historic resource. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Does anyone have questions for staff? Yes, Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Great, appreciated it. My question is simple only because this sits in Ward 5. And I think you may have said this, but I just want to make sure I heard it clearly. When it comes to any of the upkeep, let's say, for instance, something happens in the area and something is broken or torn down, how do you raise funds for that again, for it to get taken care of, just for maintenance?
For this property, there wouldn't be any. If it were designated, there wouldn't be any impact for the city to do that, for the property owner. In some cases, designation provides one of the prerequisites say there was a grant that was available for that sort of thing. Instead of having in that application to prove that it's historic, a lot of times they will use a designation as a shorthand. So if this is on the National Register or if this is a local historic landmark, usually that's a prerequisite for historic preservation-based funding.
Right. So if there was a grant, you or someone on your team will have to just apply for it?
Well, it would be more the property owner would do that. Yeah,
okay.
And in this case, it'd be the state or some of the nonprofit associations associated the state would probably, usually they do that on behalf of like the Criterion Schoolhouse Committee or a group like that.
Right. And a completely separate question. So do you foresee any more additional properties that we would have that would fall in this category anytime soon?
We have, if you let me, I'll show you, let me see. this is kind of an idea. If you see all those black the red spots there, or the kind of the darkened areas all around there, those are all either individual resources that have this same designation, or districts that have that same designation. So we have some that they're interested in, that people have been working on. We don't have any that are as far along as this one.
Again, thank you for the presentation. Great job.
I see Councillor Nishioka has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just simply want to say that I attended the event on December 2nd in 2022 when this was presented as a historic registry. It's a lovely little building. I think it adds a lot of a charm and something very nice for families to see what a schoolhouse used to be like. There's walls of information. I feel that they have done an excellent job in presenting this, and I thank them for the presentation, and I hope that we move forward with this. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions for staff? Okay, we have no one signed up for public testimony. Is there anyone present who would like to offer testimony to this item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing. And will the recorder, we need to have a motion from, who is it? Councillor Brown.
That would be from me. So I move to advance Ordinance Bill number 2-25 to second reading for enactment designated Criterion Schoolhouse as a local historic resource. I'm sorry, Councillor Brown might be able to do that motion. I just jumped on it, so my apologies.
No, I'm fine. I'll just second it.
He may want a second.
I second it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Councillor Nordyke.
Aye.
Councillor Varney.
Aye.
Councillor Tigan.
Aye.
Councillor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councillor Matthews.
Aye.
Councillor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councillor Brown.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Okay, we're moving on to special orders of business. First up, we have item 5A, the Salem Public Art Commission Annual Report. Thank you for being here.
I have a presentation that should be up there in just a minute. My name is Susan Apak. I'm the chair of the Salem Public Art Commission. Very proud to have that position, and I'm very proud to be here tonight to tell you about some really wonderful, positive, uplifting things going on in Salem, which is the art, the public art. And I just wanted to thank the city staff we recently had a transition. We were under Public Works, and we had wonderful Keith Bondog-Wynn, who was our liaison, and now we have Kathleen Swarm, who's over here under Community Services, which is, I think, where we really belong, and with the help of Jennifer Keller of Community Services. Let's see. I will forward this. Oh, I didn't realize it was going to do that animated. That's kind of cool. Public art pays for itself. There are reports and statistics out there that prove that art is good for business and for community through tourism, through jobs, attracting residents like myself, who came from the East Coast, was attracted to Salem because of the strong support of the arts and the art community here. We're excited to bring more public art, there it goes, to Salem. We have an extensive permanent art collection that's incredible, but with the support of the council, who made this resolution, that we have more temporary art in Salem, which allows for more displays and projects that don't necessarily have to be accepted into the public art collection. And we thank Councilor Nishioka for bringing that forward and for the council for voting on that unanimously. And we are working toward that. The city has a lot to be proud of from 2024. I know we're already in 2025, but this is kind of what we did last year. We've been involved in planning and enacting the goals that enrich our community through art. One big push is for outreach to the community, because a lot of people don't even know that we have a public art collection, that we have an art commission, and we've been blasting out on social media as much as we can through the city. I guess it's their Facebook page that we've been doing it. Krista Lauer, who's a commissioner, is an art historian. She's been researching the public art collection and putting out posts to educate the public and let them know that we're there and that the art belongs to them and where they can find it. We're excited that the city of Salem is on the cusp of acquiring the art collection, the complete art collection from the Salem Public Library collection. So a lot of that work has already been, we've been involved with that artwork that's in the library, but now it will belong to every resident of the city. Let's see, we take care of our art. We've had repairs to various sculptures. We're, as we all know, working toward the repair of the Echo Earth Globe. We've got the black discs that were out in the Civic Center here that are being repaired at the moment. And we keep our eye out, and please let us know if you see of any of the public artwork that needs our attention so that we can pay attention to that. We welcome and encourage new art for the public art collection, especially murals, and we're working toward making it easier and more user-friendly for businesses to have murals in Salem. This one is our newest mural. It's at 15th and Baker, and it got it's an alley between 15th and Baker on Madison Street, and it got huge support from the neighborhood association and from residents in the area. And if you can get out there to see it, it's really something. We also had a temporary public art, our first temporary public art display that Willamette University came to us and said, we want to knit things and hats and gloves and put it out for people to take as needed. And it was kind of a kamikaze thing, so it was called sort of a yarn bomb, where they put the hats and gloves and scarves out, and it was only for a day. It was a very kind of a quick project, but we hope to do it again next year and publicize it more, and possibly working with Willamette University, which was a great partnership. You've probably noticed around town the utility box wraps, where the Downtown Urban Development approached us, and they have taken details from artwork in the public art collection, and they've gotten it on vinyl, and they've wrapped these. I think they're incredible, and they're almost on every corner that you walk in downtown. They have the QR code that you can find out more about the public art collection, and I think it really brings people in to find out more about what's going on in the city. Something that's very close to my heart, thank you to Councilor Tigan and past Councilor Virginia Stapleton for helping Grant neighborhood, my neighborhood, bring the street painting program into fruition. And our newest additions were also in Grant neighborhood, and we painted the roundabouts right near Grant School. And we hope that there are more to come. So we're looking forward to many more exciting projects in 2025. One that's really high on our priority list is acquiring 3 new public artworks for Salem. 2 in downtown Salem on Commercial Street, and one in West Salem. And again, we're continuing to outreach, and we're gonna take this presentation on the road. We're gonna go to the neighborhood associations. We're hoping to present it at the next chair meeting, and just to get the word out to people that you own wonderful artwork and you should appreciate it and know about it. And we're also getting our house in order by organizing our database with better photos, providing the provenance of the artworks that we have, and educating, putting more educational information out there. And that's it. Any questions?
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Great presentation, so thank you. When I think about the art, I did have the privilege to see quite a bit of the art, that previous Councilor Stapleton and current Councilor Teigen in Ward 1. Everything looks great. I really enjoy looking at it, especially the utility box wraps. So, and I would be remiss if I did not ask this question, because there were several business owners that purposely told me I needed to ask this question, and they're not in Ward 5, just so everybody's know, they're not in my ward. So out front in their business, they have a utility box, and it is wrapped. And the business owners, they identify as Hispanic. And so their question to me was, they said, well, Dr. Brown, we appreciate you putting art here on the sidewalk, but could we have some art that represents the folks that come into our business? I didn't have an answer for that. I thought it was a good question. And so when I think about business owners and what they would like to see downtown, what would be the best way to answer those particular business owners?
Well, for now, I believe that the downtown, people are doing things that are just in the public art collection, and unfortunately, I don't know if we have anything in the public art collection that reflects that particular owner. We probably should, and maybe we do. And maybe there should have been some input from the property owners. But I'm glad you asked that question for another reason, because I think we should have more of those wraps, and I think they should come from the communities, from neighborhood associations, from other businesses. And we have discussed setting up a program similar to the street painting program, with criteria, with information, so that if somebody wanted to do it in their neighborhood or in front of their business, they could do it. And thank you for saying that, because it kind of boosted up on our priority list.
Right. Madam Mayor, may I have one more question?
Yes, go ahead.
So I like your projection for this year, the different places you're going to go and do art. How do you make the decision when it comes to, we're going to put art in, Ward 8 or Ward 7 or Ward 2? How do you collectively say we're going to put it in this ward versus this ward? Do you go in order? Do you pull, draw straws or sticks? Like, how do you make the decision as to where you're going to put art?
Well, the art, it usually is something that comes to us.
Okay.
So downtown urban development has these what they're calling wells that are already existing. I forget what the full technical term is, that they have the financing for. So they have come to us, and we are putting out an RFQ for the artwork. So it wasn't our decision to do that. And then in West Salem, there's also a development project that they put money aside to have a piece of artwork there. We do have a 0.5% program for anything that's built within in the city. So things like the Civic Center and the beautiful art, if you haven't seen it, at the Public Works building, was purchased and commissioned through that percentage when the building was done. So we don't really go out and select where to put it. It's more of coming to us and saying, hey, we want to do this, help us do it.
Right. And since you're going on the road, having a road show, that would be a good place for neighborhood associations to bring their kind of like their wish list, like if they want to see some things take place.
Absolutely.
Right, and I'm in favor of that. When I think about Ward 5, obviously there are a lot of needs throughout the entire city, but we know in Ward 5 there's a higher rate of issues that take place, whether it's crime or whether it's using a lot of our city's resources and our first responders. And so I'm always looking for different ways to find how we can curb some of that, whether it's, graffiti is an art. Depends on how you display it, right? And so there are some people that would say, well, Dr. Brown, graffiti is not an art. It's a distraction and it's a nuisance. What I have found out is some of the very young people who use graffiti in the wrong way, they're very talented individuals. It's just that we have to find a different way to channel that energy so it doesn't become an eyesore for so many of our, residents, including myself. And so I'm always looking to find ways, whether it's partnering with the school district, just to find different avenues where young people can use their talents, where it's okay to use it versus you becoming a nuisance in the community. So thank you again for your presentation. I yield the floor, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Anyone else have questions?
Thank you very much.
Before you go, I do have one. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
And along with Dr. Brown, I've been contacted by, in particular, the Courtney Place Veterans Home. They have a utility box on their corner, and they're interested in having a veteran-centric piece of art decorate that box. So do they reach out to you or the Art Commission, or how does that happen?
Sure. I would think so, and we'll direct them accordingly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Councilor Nishioka, I apologize. Go right ahead.
That's okay. I took my hand down.
Sorry,
and then put it
Linda.
back.
Did you want to say something?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Susan. Great presentation. I'm very excited about all the projects that you've got going. I do hope that people understand what you were explaining, that when buildings are built, a certain percentage goes for art that is to go with that building. And so those are the projects that come to you. Usually they need help with figuring out what to do. And so that's how Salem Public Arts Commission helps. And then, of course, they have the other projects. And I love the fact that you're moving forward with the temporary art so that it doesn't add to the collection, which means costing money in the sense of restoring and maintaining for a long period of time. So it's such a great way to get art in our community that then is not something that we have to maintain for decades. So again, thank you for all your work, Susan, and I really appreciate it.
And thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to item 5B, the Annual Historic Landmarks Commission Report. Is it Kristen Strauss?
Kirsten.
Kirsten, sorry about that.
No problem.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes, members of the council and mayor, thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Kirsten Strauss, a member of Ward 2. I'm the current chair of the Salem Historic Landmarks Commission. I'm a very passionate individual when it comes to history, especially local history. I think Salem is a really fascinating town to live in and be a part of. So it's really a pleasure for me to serve the citizens of Salem as part of the HLC. I'm also happy to present the 2024 annual report and the 2025 work plan for the commission. We're very proud of the work that we accomplished in 2024, and I have just a couple of highlights to talk to you about tonight. Some of those highlights include our monthly HLC meetings. We also have our continued discussion with tribal partners at our cultural roundtable meetings every month. We have grants to both residential and commercial property owners that support the maintenance and renovation of historic buildings, which if you own one, know you can be a little bit more expensive. In December, we reviewed some missing feature grants, which will allow historic property owners downtown to restore some missing features to their buildings. So that's a really exciting project that we were a part of. We've also had 10 years of our historic photo contest, which is really exciting. We do that every May, which is Historic Preservation Month, to celebrate both artistic talent in the community as well as seeing some cool historic buildings. So that's always a really fun project to be a part of. We've also did last year the 7th annual Qingming Festival. Qingming is a traditional Chinese day of remembrance, and we're able to celebrate that at the Pioneer Cemetery in Salem, which has a traditional Chinese funerary table, which is a really unique and amazing artifact that we have in our town. And I'm very excited to know more about that and share that with the community. We also have continued public archaeology work, including work to identify and document important places to the Methodist missionaries who arrived in this area in the 1830s. That's been a really fascinating project to be a part of, and we're excited to see more come from that. We also have our Heritage Neighborhood program. We're currently working with the SCAN neighborhood to identify historic resources based on their excited involvement on that project, so more to come on that. We also have the recommendation to the City Council about the Criterion School, which you guys just heard, so thank you for your consideration on that. We look forward to completing the work we've identified in our 2025 work plan. I'm looking forward to providing our community with continued education about technical aspects of historic preservation, as well as continued education on what it means to become a local resource, a local historic resource in our community. The Commission greatly appreciates the Mayor and the City Council for their support of the HLC and its efforts to identify and preserve local historic resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Councillor Gwynn.
I was curious, the missing, what was it? The grants for could you give us an example of what that might be?
Yeah, the Missing Features Grant, that was something that we considered at the HLC in December. For an example, one of the property owners submitted an application to restore the cornice on the top of the building. So it was a decorative historic feature that was there. We have photo evidence that it was there, so it's going to be based on what the building used to look like, and that will be restored on the building. So a very exciting project to be a part of.
Anyone else? A question? Yes, Councillor Gwynn.
I'm sorry, follow up.
Yeah.
So on those grants, how do people find out about them? How much is available? That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a partnership that we have with the development department. So I know that they do a lot of outreach with the downtown property owners about it. And then the HLC kind of comes in on the historic part of the question. Like, is this an appropriate missing feature to restore? You know, how do we kind of delegate this money? So it's sort of a partner project between our two different departments, which is great.
Anyone else? Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Next up, item 5C, Salem Parks Recreation Advisory Board, Annual Report and Presentation. Is it Keith Norris? Yes, okay.
Correct, thank you. All right, good evening, Mayor, good evening, councilors, good evening, community. My name is Keith Norris, and I'm here representing all of my colleagues on the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and appreciate the time today to talk about our annual report from 2024 and all of the accomplishments we were able to do last year and some of how we're looking ahead this year. I currently serve as chair of the board. I served during 2024 as the board's chair and have been recently reelected for chair of this year as well. SPRAB is an advisory board of 8 members appointed by City Council for 3-year terms. We come from across the city with a variety of different backgrounds and experiences and professions and ages. We work together to consider issues affecting our city's park system and recreation activities, and we gather and discuss input from the community. So we have public input at every single one of our meetings, and sometimes have a lot of it, and we consider that and deliberate on that, and we do that to fulfill our primary role, which is to advise you. And we advise you, the City Council, we advise city staff on ways to improve and enhance our city's park system and recreation programs. Our board has a long history of accomplishing this mission. We were founded in 1952, and we've been in our current state in operations largely since 1976. Our meetings now occur once per month on Thursdays, Thursday afternoons in a hybrid format. And we have board members that engage both in person and virtually, and we receive public comment both virtually and in person as well. We're supported by a great staff, Rob Romanek, Jennifer Keller here in the room tonight, as well as Councilor Varney, who serves as our liaison to the board. And so glad to have that participation and support. We've had a really busy and engaged 2024, and so I'll run through a few of our highlights here tonight. First off, we've established committees at the start of 2024 that were really focused on advancing some of the city's climate action efforts and climate action items into the Parks and Recreation system. This has been a large undertaking and involved exploring the use of materials and capital projects, how and if to transition to electric equipment in our maintenance, and incorporating things like bike share hubs and preparing our parks for alternative transportation, all of which were identified in that climate action plan. And that work of the committees is actually wrapping up now, and we hope to have recommendations to you on those fronts in the next couple of months. We also last year endorsed the Fairview Park Development Plan, which I think is coming up for consideration by all of you next month. And this effort updated and refined kind of an outdated development plan, recognizing that the neighborhood around this park has changed substantially since the previous plan was created. This is going to be a really large community level park with several sports courts, a dog park, amphitheater, and incorporates an inclusive design throughout. One of the bigger discussions that we had last year was around an agreement with Willamette University for managing Spec Keen Stadium and Bush's Pasture Park. And we recommended that the city move forward with that agreement with Willamette University, including some amendments to make some of those desired changes to the stadium. That recommendation was based on several discussions and presentations that we had during our board meetings over several months. And we heard from a lot of community members on this issue. This was something that really got the community engaged, and I think our board was really able to deliberate on that, and ultimately we recommended moving forward with that agreement with the inclusion of several modifications. And the council here considered those modifications and ultimately adopted that agreement, I think with all of those modifications, plus maybe one or two additional tweaks. The Emerald Ash Borer has arrived in Oregon and is closing in on our city, and our board is keeping abreast of that issue as it has the potential to really significantly impact Salem's tree canopy. And in addition to our parks and our recreation programs, we also have some oversight and advisory roles on our city's urban forest. Some of our tree-lined streets are nearly 100% ash, and some city parks and natural areas have significant coverage of ash tree canopy. And so this non-native invasive pest is really going to have a significant impact on our city. And so we're keeping up to date on those issues and talking with the staff. And we know that with Mylan and his team and the work they've been doing really over the last several years to continually and strategically enhance the management and understanding of our urban forest, we're prepared to really face that challenge as best as we can. This past fall, we conducted a park tour where SPRAD members were able to tour with 4 parks with city staff, and we met up with some neighborhood association representatives. So it was an extremely valuable experience for us to walk through the particular challenges and opportunities in a number of parks across the city, some new development coming in, some challenges with the improper use of graffiti in some areas and what was being done in those aspects. And so this was really a great time for us to get a handle on some of the discussions and things that we were hearing from the community as well. Our board over the past couple of years has really made a concerted effort to engage with our neighborhood associations. In particular, this engagement has focused on ensuring those neighborhood associations are aware of the Salem Parks Improvement Fund, SPIF grants, and those grant opportunities. I'm pleased to say that in 2024, we had a record number of project proposals from neighborhood associations be submitted to this program. And this is really a great program that provides a key opportunity for those local neighborhoods to guide small but really meaningful improvements to their parks within those neighborhoods. And so encourage you to reach out to your neighborhood associations in your wards and encourage them to take advantage of this opportunity. Our board also reviewed and supported a couple of grant applications for the city through letters of support and some presentations to these granting entities. This includes really a very exciting improvement that we have planned for Riverfront Park's playground area. That's going to feature inclusive play and nature-oriented design elements throughout. There's a schematic of it there on the slide of what that design might look like. We also supported a grant that would help control invasive species and restore natural ecosystems in Minto Island Conservation Area. And finally, our board has been active members in our community. We've had some members participate in the University of Oregon Sustainable City program and provide input to those students while also gaining some insights on the cutting edge of sustainable designs. And we've worked to help promote parks through outreach and social media posts in coordination with city staff. And so that was really a big year. And we were able to really accomplish quite a bit. And in 2025, we've got 3 main areas that we're looking on. Number one, as I mentioned, advising city council and city staff. That's really what our primary role. And this is going to be an especially important this year, given the upcoming budget discussions and the revenue concerns that have already been mentioned this evening. Our board recently, just this year, one of our first action was to express our support for the livability levy that you'll be considering further tonight. And we really see that as a key part of the effort for the city to ensure it has adequate revenue to support these critical community services. As mentioned earlier, you can expect to see those recommendations from our various committees on the climate action plans and how that can be implemented. Second, we are going to continue our work to engage neighborhood associations and promote the city parks to city residents. This includes the National Walk to a Park Day in October, and that is an initiative of our prior chair to really get the city to be a part of this national effort that helps people recognize the importance, and the value that city parks have. And finally, we'll be doing some strategic planning. One of the big undertakings that the city will have at the end of this year is updating the Salem Comprehensive Park System Master Plan. This is following up on the Our Salem planning effort that has completed and kind of stepping that down into our park system. And so that's going to be a really key opportunity to shape the future of our parks and how we operate. We'll have later this year a strategic planning retreat in 2025 to really touch base on these goals and these efforts and how we can make sure we're continuing to build in 2026. And again, seeing opportunities to have those park tours and really gain that valuable insights from the residents in the neighborhoods. And that's what I have for you this evening. Happy to answer any questions, but really appreciate the opportunity to present to you and to engage with this board and to contribute to the city in this way. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Varney, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair Norris, for the presentation. I mean, it's amazing what Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board does. I mean, it's been a busy year, but when you think about it, I mean, it's parks, it's recreation, it's city trees, it's the planning part. I mean, there's just so much. Climate action plan, I mean, you're all amazing. But I wanted to say especially thank you for your commitment the last meeting when you were in the airport waiting to get on your plane and your plane was boarding and he's still conducting the meeting. Anyway,
Made it happen.
Thank you so much for all you do and the members and obviously staff that support the committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor.
Great dedication. Thank you. And Councillor Gwynn, go ahead.
I was just curious of the location of the Fairview Park that you were talking about. Is that the one Battle Creek and Reed?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay, because that's on an
Thanks to the staff
information
support for that.
report, and it's going to be a really cool park from what I saw. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to item 5D, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll come right back. Okay, thank you. Take their seats, that'd be great. Welcome back, Councillor Tigan and Councillor Nishioka.
See the power you have with that gavel?
You better watch it.
It's like Thor there.
Councillor Gwynn, here she comes. Okay, let's get back to business. With item 5D, Josh Eggleston is here with the report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I have a brief presentation for you this evening. And a little bit of it is recap from your last work session. So just to dive right in, what is local option levy? Voter approval required, temporary property tax lasting up to 5 years, generally used on specific services, available to other governments. So not just the city, but it's available to other jurisdictions also. Where does this presentation come from? You had a work session on January 21st. We presented a levy scenario, and you directed staff to bring back 2 additional scenarios, one at the 98 cents and one at less than $1.10. I chose $1.09. So for the first scenario, 98 cents per thousand, approximately $229 per year per residential household. We did make some adjustments here, and I'll go over them on the other slide. We were able to recognize a vacancy savings estimate for each of the programs, which allowed us to add some additional staff within the 98 cents. So at the 98 cent level, it maintains the current staffing at the library, 37.5 full-time equivalent positions. It does restore some service hours with an additional 3 positions, increasing the main library hours from 38 to 48 hours per week, and increases the West Salem branch from 10 hours to 20 hours per week. In addition to the library, we don't want to forget parks maintenance. It maintains current staffing at 45 FTE. For recreation, maintains the current staffing at 5 FTE, and for Center 50 Plus, maintains current staffing at 9 FTE. As I mentioned, we did adjust some costs here, and this is a new view. Since we're likely considering a separate fund for these dollars, it's set up as a separate city fund, so the 0 beginning fund balance with an ending fund balance that rolls to the next year. You can see the estimated levy revenue there at $14 million to 16.6 over the 5 years. And then, as I mentioned, the net program costs. So for each of the program costs, we looked at the history of the program and identified likely vacancy savings for each of the areas. Very similar to what we did in the 5-year forecast, and actually went more aggressive with the forecast review team. The 3 FTE for the library restoration are highlighted there in yellow. So 300,000 to 385 over the 5-year period. And as you can see, over the 5 years at that funding level, it maintains a fund balance. So here at the bottom line, you start with a higher fund balance in the first year, and then a lower fund balance in the out years. As you're very familiar with, our costs are increasing faster than property taxes. So at this levy rate, it brings in a tiny bit extra funding in the beginning, but you absorb it over the 5 years with the program costs. At $1.09, approximately $255 per year per residential household. Similar with the library, it maintains the current staffing. It restores additional service hours. So instead of 3 FTE, it's 8 FTE, 5 additional hours from the 98 cent scenario from 38 to 53 hours, which is historically where the library's been at for quite a while, prior to the more recent reductions. And increases the West Salem branch by an additional 5 hours, so from 10 hours to 25 hours as opposed to the 20 hours under the 98 cents. It also allows funding for an outreach team with a focus on bringing mobile library programs to underserved geographic areas of Salem. We recognize that the main branch and the West Salem branch don't reach all of Salem, so this is an effort to get into the north and south areas of Salem. And then similar to the 98 cents, it maintains current staffing for parks maintenance, recreation, and Center 50 Plus. There is one additional item here, and I'm going to go to the next slide. Similar to the previous slide, you'll see a higher fund balance in the beginning with a lower fund balance on the outside, with the hour restoration highlighted here for an outreach team. The community service admin coverage, this is an effort to recognize that these programs do have indirect costs, oversight costs that are maintained in the general fund. As the levy is written, this could also be directed to additional programs for Center 50 Plus, Parks Maintenance, Park Recreation, the other ones that don't have service restorations. I do want to note that if you were to do that, you wouldn't see the benefit of the covering additional costs in the general fund, which I'll show that slide here in a second. But the $9 did give some additional capacity to add some costs within this scenario. For a staffing comparison, I know that there was some confusion about positions and FTEs and classifications, so I just wanted to break down very specifically the positions we're talking about for the current library budget, and then the 98 cents and the $9. And you can see the adjustments there for the senior library assistants and library assistants. Similarly, for Parks, Recreation, Center 50 Plus, no changes, but I didn't want to recognize those positions. For the financial impact, local option levy would shift these costs from the general fund to levy funds. The levy does not fully eliminate the general fund deficit. This slide shows the 98 cent per thousand scenario and the impact to the general fund. As you can see, it looks better than the scenario we presented at the work session. You can see about $100,000 deficit there in fiscal year 2026. I do want to note for both of these slides, while the levy is focused on the library, park, Center 50 Plus, the levy would prevent significant reductions to those services, but it also prevents significant reductions to other services in the general fund, because what you're doing is you're offloading the cost of those services into this levy fund. So the overall general fund is in much better shape by offloading those services. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, just the previous slide, the deficit does continue. So while the fiscal year 2026 looks about even, there is an up to $8 million deficit in the last 2 years of the forecast. A similar picture for the $9. This does represent covering those administrative costs for community services. So a slightly greater benefit for the general fund by moving those costs out of the general fund into levy funds. But there still is a deficit on the horizon. And like we presented at the work session on January 21st, that's where other revenue, other reductions scenarios would have to take place to manage that deficit going forward. Some accountability measures that could be considered, and I would actually recommend, is a separate fund and a specific audit for the funds. So we do an overall financial audit for all city finances. It's a high-level look to make sure we're spending everything in accordance with all regulations. This is employed by other cities, so a specific audit on levy funds to ensure compliance with ballot language. Election costs and timing. The deadline is February 28th. We would anticipate, if you want to move forward, bringing a measure back to the February 24th meeting. As we've mentioned before, $35,000 for the election is the current estimate for both Marion and Polk County. This could be adjusted up or down depending on other jurisdictions that have measures on the ballot. Next step is, if approved, draft ballot language is attached to the report. We would look for feedback on that language to bring back to your next meeting. And that concludes my presentation. As you can see in the staff report, we've outlined 3 different options: one at the $9 levy rate, one at the 98 cent levy rate, and then if you choose not to refer a measure. Thank you very much. happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Josh. Dr. Brown, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. CFO. Great presentation as always. So I don't know what page number it is, but it's in regards to the $9 scenario, and we're looking at FTE. So I know we spend quite a bit of time discussing FTE for the library, and I know several of us have gone on tours and looked at where we used to be and where we're currently at. I get all of that. So with the $9 scenario, we are still left with the same amount of FTE for parks and also the same amount of FTE for Center 50 Plus. And so I'm looking at this through a lens of, and there are going to be some pushback on this, but I welcome that. I'm looking through the lens of equality, right? And so if we are going to put this on the levy, on the ballot rather, and give voters the opportunity to say yay or nay, I think about the parks, right? I think about the parks. If we're going to stay at that particular level, is there any room to increase that for the FT for the parks?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So with the $9 scenario, as I mentioned, this community services administrative coverage could allow some flexibility, within council's control and the limitations of whatever ballot language is adopted. You could shift some of those to service restorations or enhancements, but it would reduce the savings on the general fund side.
Right, and the reason I say this because, and I think, I'm not going to speak for all of us, but yes, we want our parks to be maintained. We just had a presentation talk about our parks, and I'm bringing this to this body is because this past weekend, again, I was with some business owners. Well, actually, it was in the middle of last week, and one of the constituents had said to me, they said, "Well, Dr. Brown, you all are not doing a good job in taking care of the parks." And I was like, "Oh, tell me more," right? Because that's what we do. We say, "Tell me more." And so he tells me more about the job that we're not doing good. And he mentioned, the skate park, right when you cross over into West Lynn. He mentioned that park. And he said that, and I quote, he said, "That is the most worthless park in our city." And I sat there and I just took it all in because that's what we do. We listen to people. And so he is sharing with me his concerns, his worries of taking his family in that park because we have a huge homeless situation and people camp out there, right? And so we have this mix of both worlds here. And I just want to put that into the space because on one hand, we do want to keep our libraries open. We want them to stay fully staffed. We want people to enjoy them. We want all of that. At the same time, we also want our parks to be well maintained and taken care of. And so we do have some of our parks that we just don't have enough people to take care of them. And so I'm not looking to, and this is not a question, I'm just bringing it to this space because you're probably thinking like, "Dr. Brown, I can't fix all that," and I am not asking. I just want us to have real talk to say, hey, we do have some great parks, and we have some great parks that are going to be, built. I just want us to remember that there are some parks currently that are considered not to be safe. And if they're not safe, hence comes the intersectionality of public safety, because it's very difficult to have parks and you do not include public safety. I would say that you can't have one without the other. And so that's the argument I think we have to be willing to not only stand toe-to-toe on, but we got to be willing to communicate that with all of our constituents, because if we don't, it's not fair and it's incorrect. So thank you, Madam Mayor. I yield the floor back.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Teagan has his hand up. Teagan, sorry, Paul.
That's okay, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I guess I want to just hear a little bit more on the value of establishing the fund. I think Josh might get the impression that the breakdown in hours or the breakdown in FTEs that you're showing us today are sort of like written in a constitution or something, that we wouldn't be able to change them or make adjustments into the future. My understanding, and maybe I'm just checking with you, on the record here is that the value of the fund is, say these are the services that it'll go towards, but 3 years from now, if there's a different assortment of, I don't know, that to Dr. Brown's point, something needs to go to the parks or something, that kind of adjustment could be made.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It all comes back to the legal limitations that are built into the ballot title and the ballot language. So council could make changes within the confines of those restrictions. I will say that a separate fund allows additional level of visibility, transparency. It's just an easy display to see how those funds are being spent. I know that within the general fund we have cost centers, so for me, it's fairly easy to pull out those costs and see them separately. But for the general public, it could be a little more challenging. So having a separate display where we could see those costs allocated in a different way, I think is beneficial.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Nordyke.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Teigen, for mentioning that. I would encourage folks to take a look at the draft ballot title. It is included in your attachments. Under that draft, it doesn't guarantee a certain number of jobs, but it does identify percentages. So, and it also says that use of this revenue would be limited to library, Parks and Rec, and Center 50 Plus. So I remember from prior conversations with this council that you want to be vague enough in the ballot title not to mislead people. That's not the intention. It's that you have to be flexible enough because things can change. A lot of these staff are subject to collective bargaining agreements. What is reached in negotiations 2 years into a 5-year levy is something that no one knows the answer to as of today. So that's why it would make sense to structure it as percentages rather than hard and fast numbers, because costs can change rather dramatically. The other question I wanted to say, for the 98-cent level, as I understand it, I'm just looking at my notes, that's maintaining 96 FTE plus adding the 3 additional positions. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Great. Of those current 96 positions, how many of those positions are currently vacant?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I don't have an answer for you this evening, and it gets a little complicated because with the budget reductions that were proposed last year, the library filled some positions with limited duration positions. So in that case, the position is still authorized, but just due to the uncertainty going forward, those people in those positions have an end date of June 30th. So it's a little of a nuanced question, but there are several vacancies within that number.
All right. So the reason I ask is when I go out to the community and I talk about this, it's important for me to understand how many jobs, how many people am I keeping employed by supporting this levy, because these are human beings who have invested their time into becoming civil servants. And it's helpful for me to know how many of those positions are currently filled. And I know in a city of this size, employees do come and go. So it'll be helpful for me to have that information moving forward, even though I know it's like sand shifting under your feet when you have a large number of employees. So I find that very helpful. I feel pretty satisfied with personally with the proportion of who gets what under this. Library under the 98-cent scenario, let me just double check my notes here. That's 37 library plus 3 more, so that's 40. But parks would have 45 FTE. Recreation services, 5 FTE. Center 50 plus 9. So parks will still have more FTEs under this plan than any of the other services, even when you include 3 restored library positions, if that's of help for the conversation. That's all I have for now.
Councillor Varney?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I wanted to mention, thank you, Councillor Brown, for bringing up the part about the parks, because I did want to talk about our parks a little bit. Well, I guess I can ask you. I really like the idea of having a separate fund, a dedicated fund for the parks, the library, et cetera. However, I do think that we need a little more flexibility in those proportions and percentages. Mainly, one of the things I am really interested in is increasing, when we can, increasing the number of park rangers we have, since we only have one for 91 parks, and public safety is a huge issue and concern in our community. Like I said, 91 parks, and we're developing, others. And I don't know how we can write that into the language or have it vague enough, but I think we need to have that flexibility moving forward. So I wanted to say that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Matthews.
I tend to agree. I like the idea of the flexibility in the language, and my question originally was sort of on par with that. In the explanatory statement right now, it sort of breaks down for instance, looking at the library, depending upon which choice is chosen, the amount of hours that we presume would be at the main branch versus the West Salem branch. And while I don't think we're necessarily legally beholden to the explanatory statement, is my understanding. Yeah.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. Yes, so the legal requirement is in the ballot title. The explanatory statement is more of a commitment that the City Council and the city would make to voters.
And so kind of online with that, my hope, or my hope ask would be that we, like, if we're going to define out the amount of hours, for instance, for the library, that we look at something more holistic of combining those and saying the Salem Public Library will receive X amount of operational hours. And that way, if flexibility is needed between having more hours at the West Salem branch or less hours at the West Salem branch, or allocating them to a third branch at some day, whatever it might be, we have that flexibility to do that without really kind of going against our explanatory statement. So that would be probably the piece for me.
Anyone else? Questions? Councillor Brown, go ahead.
I was waiting to see if Councillor Tiger or Nishioka had something before I used up more airspace, because I can be long-winded. So and this is not a question, so CFO, or I could turn it into a question. So when I think about FTE, and again, and Councillor Nordyke said it perfectly, FTE, those are just not, just little items on, or numbers on an item line item rather. Those are people. And I think about Center 50 Plus. Center 50 Plus does a phenomenal job with not a lot of resources, but a lot of people, volunteers, just committed. And so part of me says, whatever language we use, I know according to the city attorney, we got to be very careful with language we put on the ballot. I think it's important that with this group that we also remember that we do have senior citizens in our community that may need additional services also. And so I don't want to leave that off the table, because I think sometimes we may tend to forget that this body of voters, they need just as much as attention as anyone else. And so I think if this does pass, and hopefully it will, and that we'll have the opportunity to come back and just revisit the conversation to say, okay, what else can we do for Center 50 Plus? Do we need to hire 1 or 2 more people, or what do we need? I just don't want that to lose any momentum. So, not a question.
Thank you. Councillor Nishioka, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, I wanted to add to the conversation that I appreciate Councillor Matthews' suggestion of stating the hours, the total hours, instead of specifying whether it's West Salem or main branch or potentially a future. I think that's a great idea. I would also like to add that I feel the language of the actual statement that should not reflect a percentage, but I feel strongly that it should state how much the average home in Salem would pay by month and annually, so that people can understand that. Because if I walked in and I saw 3%, I'd still be like, what does that mean? So I feel very strongly that some of the language of this can be adjusted. I also agree with, I believe it was Councilor Teigen and possibly Councilor Varney, that also feel that it would be the best for us to make sure that we had a separate fund that the levy revenue went into, and that very possibly we also have a steering committee that can oversee that, just so that we can honor the obligation that we are making to the voters.
Thank you. Anything further? Yes, Councilor Matthews.
I guess the last thing I do want to say, and this is mainly just so that everybody has a lot of clarity as voters, and CFO, you mentioned this already, this is not a full gap fill for what the deficit is projected to be. And for that reason, the only way, and this is so that everyone knows, even with this passing, at this moment, the only way to protect the other things in the general fund will be potentially passing other revenue of some form. And so know that voting for this does not fully fix a problem. Voting for this is only a piece of something. And so I just want to make sure that's really clear for the voters, so that as we go through this process, nobody feels like they got cheated in the end if this passes and then we're still not made whole.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I want to follow Councilor Matthews with that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. And Councilor Teigen said this a couple of weeks ago. If this does not pass, the backup plan, and I quote, the contingency plan is we pass the budget. And that budget will mean that we'll have to cut that $13 million across the board, however that looks like. And so I want the voters to realize that there are going to be some that are going to say, I don't want taxes at all. No taxes, I don't want that. And since we will have very little control over what's all going to be on there, and Mr. City Attorney, please tell me if I'm wrong about this, we don't have a say-so in whether Chemeketa is going to put something on the bond, correct? That's their house.
Correct. That's their decision to make.
Right. And so if they are on the bond, and we're on the ballot also, apologies, the ballot, and there's a voter that says, oh, too much money, too much taxes, and they just say no, 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 the reality of it is, if it does fail, we do pass the budget, and that budget will look very differently, and it will impact every single one of us in this room. And I will be remiss, I'm using one of your words, CFO, I will be remiss if I didn't say this. Salem will look and feel very different. And if we do not think about public safety, a part of me says that needs to be considered a priority. Because at the end of the day, we can't do anything without public safety. If there's an issue at the library, we're going to call the police. If there's an issue in the parks, we're going to call police. And the last time I checked, Chief Womack's team doesn't move without the assistance of Chief Giroth's team. They work in tandem. And at the end of the day, if I have an emergency at 1 o'clock in the morning, God forbid, and I call 911, the expectation is that someone's going to show up. But if $14 million are cut across the board, that means some of his teams are no longer going to have jobs. And if I'm expecting someone to show up at my house in 10 minutes, that 10 minutes may be 15 or even longer. So now it's life and death. And you may be thinking, well, Dr. Brown, you sure are painting a very morbid picture. Well, I'm painting a picture that is true. This is reality. Reality says we either step up to the plate to fix this and pass it, and if not, in the words of Councilor Teigen, the contingency plan is the budget, which means we will have to cut, and that will not feel comfortable for anyone. I yield the floor.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councilor Nishioka, go ahead.
Thank you again. I appreciate calling on me. To both Councilors Brown and Matthews' comments, I want everyone also to understand that we know our work is not finished. We will continue to find potentially revenue, such as people are asking, payment in lieu of taxes or whatever. Our work is not completed, and we will continue on finding opportunities. That's what we have to do. And we'll be doing that as a budget committee. But this is what is so pressing for us right now, because we have to make this decision by the end of this month and move it forward. And I would feel we have to bring this forward because of the amount of community support and requests that we bring this forward to allow our voters to make the decision. So I just want us to make clear that it is up to our voters, and we have to, as a council, in my opinion, move forward with bringing this levy to them so they have that opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nishioka. Anyone else? Well, I would just like to add again, I said this last meeting, that I am so impressed with these three entities coming together with such a great willingness to help promote this and see it through. And I also am in favor of its own fund, if fund is the right word, so that, because we all know the general fund we've got work to do on that. And if this money should come through, I would want it to be separate so that it doesn't even appear to get lost in the shuffle. So that's just my 2 cents. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. City Attorney, how do we move forward?
With the indulgence of the acting city manager, I have a suggestion. We have talked about potentially, creating a separate fund for this, for the levy if it were to pass. I think it makes we're generally in support of that concept. Unless council objects, we will include that language in the ballot title and the explanatory statement. So if the levy passes, the tax funds generated from the levy will be put in a special city fund specific for that use. I would also suggest that the ballot title and explanatory statement also include language regarding a levy oversight committee or levy steering committee. I think steering committee was the phrase that Councilor Nishioka had mentioned to me, that would be formed to monitor the use of the funds and to provide recommendations to council on the use. Unless there's objection from council, or unless you want to take a vote on these issues separately, we'll go ahead and include that into the language.
Are there any objections?
The third item that I had discussed with Councilor Nishioka earlier was, what she mentioned tonight, was including language regarding the average annual and average monthly cost for the homeowner into the ballot title itself. That language appears in the explanatory statement. It talks about that. We can duplicate that language and put it into the ballot title. However, there is a bit of a catch. So the ballot title has very limited number of words you can use in each section. In the summary of the ballot title, which would be the most obvious place to put that, we're limited to 175 words. The draft that I sent out to you earlier that's in your report is at 142 words. I just was messing with my computer and cutting and pasting that language into the summary, and it comes up to 205 words. So we're pretty good at taking various articles out of sentences and condensing. So on that issue, I think it makes a lot of sense to include that type of language in the summary, but we're going to have to make some concessions on other portions of the statement. So I will do our best to include that language, but it's going to look a little bit different than how that language looks in the explanatory statement, and the other language in the summary is going to be a little bit less perfect English, if that makes sense. So if council is okay with that, we'll go ahead and proceed with that. My promise to you is I will get that revised language out to council as soon as possible, much prior to the 24th, so council has a chance to look at that individually, and you can contact me, Josh, or Krishna if you have concerns about the revised language. And then if there's changes we need to make on the floor on the 24th, please know. But if there are changes that need to be made that council needs to act on, we can do that.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Councillor Matthews?
I was just, do you need clarity from us as far as 98 cents or $1.09 tonight, or?
So what we'll need tonight is a motion from Councilor Nishioka as a council president, and then an approved motion by council. So Councilor Nishioka was going to kind of read the pulse of council tonight, and maybe that might take some more discussion to find out where council's at on the 98 versus 109, and then I think she'll be prepared with a motion.
Councillor Nishioka, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is directed to City Attorney. I would just want clarity that based on what you've just said, with the language including separate fund, when I make the motion, I do not need to add that to the motion because you've already got the direction, or should I add it? That's my question, and then we'll decide on amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Yes, the staff recommendation would include language in the ballot title or explanatory statement regarding a separate fund as well as a steering committee.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Matthews.
I'll just make it easy. I would vote for either one of these, so whichever one goes up is what I would support.
Councillor Brown?
I'll follow Councilor Matthews. I know a while back, feels like forever, but it really wasn't. We had discussed that it was going to be $1.09 versus $1.10 because we want people to kind of think about the numbers 110. We wanted that to be out of people's minds, but I don't know if the average voter is going to connect the dots with $1.10 versus what happened with 110. I'm not, but it doesn't make, So here's my ask. If we know the lower amount isn't going to cover it, and the 109 amount will, do some good justice, why not just go back to 110? Am I asking for too much, CFO?
It's certainly up to council, the rate you choose. 110 would cover a little bit more additional costs or service restoration or enhancements than the $1.09. But it's certainly a policy choice.
Right. And Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
So there were some constituents that emailed us and shared their concerns, and I need to ask this question because I do not know the answer to it. So some of the constituents said, well, hey, I'm a voter and I would like to pay more. That's not legal, correct? Like, if you decide to say, oh, the voters over here in Ward 1, they want to pay more than those in Ward 8. That doesn't work, correct?
No, we can't set an individual property levy rate.
There we go. Perfect. Well said. So thank you, constituents, whoever emailed that to us, because you can't do that.
Yes, Councillor Nordijk.
98 cents. 98 cents. We need to maximize the chances of this passing. To many people in this community, that difference is a huge financial difference. 98 cents and not a penny more, I feel strongly. It's already pretty high. And there's a huge difference between this passing and still not making our budget the way we want to be, and it failing, and those 96 FTEs are wiped clean. Perhaps other things are wiped clean. We have to recognize, given the mood of this city right now, that we are already asking a lot of them. And I say not a penny more.
Thank you. Councillor Nordijk, I would like to echo your sentiments and also to acknowledge the public testimony of the coalition of the three groups who have the most interest in what's happening here. And I too would support the 98 cents. Sorry, Councillor Teigen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My rationale for which rate to choose is really which one will fully fund the services that we've identified as being included in the levy. Last time when we met and were debating between 98 cents and 109, the numbers reflected a different way of doing the projections. And at that time, 109 would have fully funded the library at its current rate, restoring the hours, the parks, and Center 50 plus. The number that we see tonight, the 98-cent number, has shifted that calculation, and now the 98-cent number will cover the library as we know it, some additional hours, the parks, and Center 50 plus. So for that reason, I think sticking with 98 cents is the choice I would prefer. I think our voters, we've heard a lot of testimony too about people's inability to pay this. And we know it's difficult, but we as leaders know that there's a version of Salem on the other side of this that we don't want to face. And so we're asking for the public support to help avoid that. But I think we need to do it at the lowest rate possible. And just want to support what Councilor Nordyke said and yourself, Madam Mayor, that 98 cents feels right for that reason. Thank you.
Councilor Nishioka, please go ahead.
Thank you. I also want to state that with the revised estimates, I also feel that 98 cents is appropriate because the adjustments have been made so that we can meet those estimates. And again, as Councilor Nordyke and Teigen and yourself have already said, you feel comfortable with the 98 cents, and we are getting input from the communities, the groups and organizations that are going to be supporting this and bringing their efforts to get this passed at the election. So I feel that 98 cents will be the appropriate amount. And for many of the people that I held community conversations with, they were in support of both, but hands down, they were wanting to see the $1.09, but that's when those numbers were different. And I believe that they would also be in favor of this amount with those numbers, estimated numbers having changed. So I feel that it will be the best to move forward with. I also want to say for all of those that have written me and said that they would support, you always can donate. I just want you to know, for those that have that opportunity, and that we will not turn that away, and the organizations, the library, the parks, Center 50 would I'm sure welcome any donations that you should give. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nishioka. Anyone else? Yeah, Councilor Varney.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say in terms of the rate, I had originally wanted to support the $1.09 for the same reasons. I felt that we needed to cover everything, and that moving forward, that gave us just that little bit of cushion for a couple of years while we keep working on alternatives and additional revenue things. But I also understand that 98 cents, especially now that the calculations have been redone, and that will cover our, our current services. Plus, I guess what I'm saying is I would support the 98 cents because I think this would have a greater chance of passing at 98 cents than the other one.
Thank you, Councilor Varney. I think we're maybe reaching a bit of a consensus. Is this Councilor Nishioka? Would you have a motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. I am looking forward to making this motion. Thank you, everyone. I move to direct staff to return to the council on February 24th, 2025 with a resolution referring a 5-year local option levy to voters for the May 20th, 2025 election at a levy rate of 98 cents per thousand of assessed value, And all the rest has already been, we were told that all the rest will be added in the language. Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second by Gwen. Any further discussion? Councillor Varney.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I recognize, well, thanks for all the emails that so many people have been sending in. I still see the concerns regarding public safety, and I wanted to mention after the survey that we had last, 6-9 months ago, I wanted to let folks know that passage of this levy would significantly reduce the reductions to police and fire. And I think it's really important to point that out. I realize in the survey, the majority, I guess it seemed, wanted a public safety levy instead of a livability levy. But the thing is, public safety is so crucial, we should not be having to put it on the ballot every 5 years. And so I wanted to point that out. I recognize the importance of it in our community, but the reason it's not good to put on a levy is because we need to have that security and that permanence and make sure that it will continue to be there, regardless of someone voting on that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Varney. Anything further? Yes, Councillor Brown.
I just want to second Councilor Varney, what she said. I agree with that 100%. I think people have heard me say this, and I'll keep saying it. Public safety is and needs to be number one. I do not see us having, functional libraries. I do not see us having parks that we can go to and enjoy. Nor do I see us, having even a Center 50 Plus without public safety. I just don't see any of those because we need public safety at every single one of those, whether it's something takes place at the center, whether it's an incident at the park. I just believe it's crucial. Behind the scenes, we are aware that both of those entities and both chiefs are here tonight. They and their teams do a phenomenal job. And if we could have more of them, we would. And so thank you, Councilor Varney.
Anything further? Seeing nothing further, we have a motion and a second. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Councillor Varney.
Aye.
Councillor Tigan.
Aye.
Councillor Nishioka.
Aye.
Councillor Matthews.
Aye.
Councillor Gwynn.
Aye.
Councillor Brown.
Aye.
Councillor Nordyke. Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes. I just want to add before we move forward that I'm looking forward to how this unfolds, this collaboration, and inviting our community to come alongside as this goes to the ballot. So thank you very much. And we're moving on to information reports.
We have a poll, 3.2A.
Oh, we have a poll, 3.2A. I apologize. We need to take care of that business first. Councillor Matthews, please go ahead.
I said the motion, correct? Yeah. I move that the City Council refer the funding request for 5 fire station bay exhaust systems back to the Bond Oversight Steering Committee for reconsideration of using safety and livability bond dollars for project completion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'm going to give it to Councillor Gwynn. She sits closer to Councillor Matthews. Any discussion? Councillor Matthews, I apologize, to your motion.
Yeah, so this is obviously, I'm sure you all read the staff report already. This is for 5 fire station bay exhaust systems. They're needed for the safety and livability for the firefighters in these stations. Originally, this was referred to the steering committee, and at that time, they kind of determined that it was, let's see if we can take this out of the general fund, non-contingent general fund. However, tonight we also took almost $1 million out of that fund for our self-insurance premiums. And so we all know how sacred right now general fund dollars are. When we actually sold our bonds, and Josh can speak way better to this than I can. When we sold the $100 million bonds, we actually ended up with $107 million, so we had a slight overage there than what we were expecting. And on top of that, the fire apparatus, when we purchased them, that came in slightly under budget from what we were expecting. And so the intentionality behind this to be to utilize the remainder of those fire funds that we were anticipating spending on those apparatus to be able to leverage them as part of this. And I looked back at the original bond to make sure it really fit within the confines of what that bond said. And on our original bond, it says for construction and repair of city facilities, which I feel like this really fits right well with. So that was my reasoning.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Nishioka, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. Yes, the question I have, and this may be, I'm not sure what staff would answer this. I know that we need to get this done. And though I appreciate the motion to send it back to the bond steering committee, I believe that it is in the purview for council to make this decision, whether it comes from general fund or steering or from the livability bond. And I'd like to understand that because we need to get the work done, first off. And I would also like to hear what funds have been made available so that I can appreciate how this is maybe not cutting into the livability bond and the promised what we promised the voters it would do. That's my other concern, and I know that was the concern of the steering committee. So I hope somebody can answer that.
Go ahead, Mr. Eggleston.
Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. I appreciate the question. So staff originally brought this to the Bond Oversight Committee as a consideration. The fire department is near completion on the purchase of their apparatus. We're estimating some savings. I won't get down to the dollar amount quite yet, but there would be sufficient savings for this purchase. So it's within that category of $26 million. For the fire apparatus purchase that we identified as a potential for the Bond Oversight Committee.
Councillor Varney? Oh, I apologize. Was there a follow-up? No. Councillor Varney. Oh, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, there is a follow-up. Could someone answer the question if we can right now just move forward with saying it can come from the livability bond, or do we have to send it back to the committee? That's the other question I asked.
It's certainly within the purview of City Council to make that decision.
Thank you.
Councillor Varney?
Well, I sit on the infrastructure bond steering committee, and we did have quite the discussion and the concern about scope creep, I guess. I appreciate you bringing up the maintenance part of it. I guess my question is there any way this can be paid out of building and safety?
No, it couldn't. Building and safety is restricted to the provision of building permits and building inspection.
Anything further? Seeing nothing further.
Correct. So if you'd like council to take direction on this right now, you can do a substitute motion.
So I would move that City Council approve that purchase. I'm not exactly sure how to say that, but.
If I understand your intent, you'd like council to direct that bond funds be used for this expense instead of general fund.
That would be it, yes. That is my motion, substitute motion.
Do we have a second?
I will second it.
Thank you. Motion by Gwynn, second by Nishioka.
Gwynn discussion.
Councillor Gwynn, to your motion.
Well, given all that's been said, it sounds like this needs to be done, and it's a safety issue for our fire department, so let's do it.
Anything further? Okay. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike. Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, we are now officially on to information reports. Item 6A, the City of Salem quarterly financial reports. Item 6B, purchases approved administratively from December 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. Item 6, yes, Councillor Gwynn.
On 6C, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to look through this, but this is 102 acres, 562 lots, 6 phases, with lots ranging in size from 2,271 square feet to 12,000 square feet. There's open spaces, nature trails, several dog parks, that big park on the Fairview Park. And I wanted to point out that I always listen to Planning Commission, not always, but most of the time, Planning Commission meetings. They had 2 hearings on this. And I wanted to say to Lisa and her staff, both the applicant and Planning Commission acknowledge the collaborative efforts between the developer and the city to make this project happen. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you.
Wow, thank you for that, Councillor Gwynn. And you, by far, take the prize for attending the most meetings you don't have to be at. So really, thank you for that. It really helps in understanding. So thank you so much. Okay, that is item 6C. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Matthews.
No, that's okay. I also wanted to just comment on 6C. So this is in my ward, and I wanted to kind of first look at some of the historical things. So I reached out to Councillor Phillips, the previous Councillor Phillips, kind of in reference to this. Just he was more involved in this than I was, and so this was more during his time. This is more of his project, and so I want to give respect to the work that he did on this. But second tier to that, he really pointed out how well the developer has done at reaching out to the neighborhood associations early on this, taking their input, hearing it, and actually implementing it. And so for that, the neighborhood association was in support of this. And so I wanted to kind of do 2 things. And one, I wanted to give a homage to Councillor Phillips and the work that he put in on this, and then also just to the developer that really did a great job. So in the spirit of Councillor Phillips, heck yes on this thing. So.
That's perfect. Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Anyone else? That was awesome. Okay, so did I say it yet? Yeah, 6C, the Planning Commission decision and application to develop approximately 102.44 acres of the former Fairview Training Center site approved. Thank you very much. And we are moving on. We have no ordinances. We do have 7.1, a first reading, 7.1A, and Councillor Nordike. Please
And
go.
I'll read the ordinance title.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Ordinance Bill number 325, an ordinance declaring certain territory located at 5725 Skyline Road South and land adjacent annexed to the City of Salem, prescribing zoning and withdrawing the territory from the Salem Suburban Rural Fire Protection District.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Nordike.
Thank you. I move advancing Ordinance Bill number 3-25, approving annexation, applying city zoning, and approving withdrawal from the Salem Suburban Rural Fire Protection District for a territory located at 5725 Skyline Road and land adjacent to second reading for passage.
Second. Nishioka, go ahead.
We have a motion by Nordike and a second by Gwynn. Any discussion? Okay. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Counselor Matthews?
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn?
Aye.
Counselor Brown?
Aye.
Counselor Nordike? Counselor Varney?
Aye.
Counselor Tigan?
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy?
Aye. I wanted really bad to say heck yeah, but thank you for that. Okay, moving on to 7.2, second reading.
Ordinance Bill Number 125, an ordinance relating to the Salem-Willamette Valley Airport, amending SRC Sections 9.005, .040, .095, .100, .120, .215, .240, and Appendix 1 of SRC Chapter 9. Counselor Matthews.
Aye.
Counselor Gwynn.
Aye.
Counselor Brown.
Aye.
Counselor Nordike. Aye. Counselor Varney.
Aye.
Counselor Tigan.
Aye.
Counselor Nishioka.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Now we are on to, Counselor Tigan, did you have a question?
No, it's just late where I am.
Okay, thanks for hanging in there. We are on to public comment, and we do have a few people signed up, 3 in fact. We'll have Norm Baxter go first, and then Mark, is it DeCourcy? Up second, thank you, sir. So please step forward, is it 3 minutes? Yes. You'll have 3 minutes for testimony at 2 minutes? Or 1 minute. After 2 minutes, the yellow light will come on, and then the red light will come on when your 3 minutes are up. Thanks for being here. Norm just left. Oh, Norm left. Okay, well, we'll move on then from Norm to Mr. DeCourcy. Thank you. Excuse me, sir, if you could, and announce your name and either your ward or your address, please.
Okay. My name is Mark DeCourcy. I'm in Ward 1. I'm on the board of the Grant Neighborhood Association. I have 2 related issues regarding revenue. One of them is that I understand that the city has forgiven a number of taxes and offered waivers to a number of businesses in the area in the amount of millions of dollars over the years. And it sounds like the shortfall the city has in its revenues could have been much alleviated if those waivers had not been issued. And if they're continuing to issue those waivers, the shortfalls will continue. And the city attorney, in the interest of equity, says, no, we can't offer individual, or we can't levy differential taxes to different properties, but in the other way, by offering these levies, we have a very inequitable situation. I wind up, for instance, in my taxes, making up the shortfalls that are created by the fact that Amazon is not paying the taxes it would normally owe as a business in the area. The second issue I would like to talk about is we have at the Grant Neighborhood Association, we have continuing complaints about traffic violations in the area. There is on Capitol Road, we have often street races coming through there with cars up to 100 miles an hour up that area. They blow through the street lights and through the traffic signals. The problem is the police say they don't have the men to enforce it. So what we have is a situation of continuing flouting of the law because we do not have enforcement. And the police say that they will not enforce speed limits in excess of 10 miles an hour. What we have is a lack of enforcement, and the fines are obviously too low. If we raise the fines on traffic violations, we could finance what is necessary to enforce the laws and perhaps produce revenues that are badly needed as well. And these things are a safety issue. They're life and death issues. And so I would like to interest you in the subject, Dr. Brown, of raising the traffic, introducing a draconian approach to enforcing the traffic laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeCourcy, for your testimony. Beth Schmidt? She left? Okay. That means that before I use this gavel and we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to this council for showing up so respectfully and thoughtfully through difficult issues. So it's a pleasure to serve with you, and we're adjourned.